Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. Today is Wednesday, July 26, 2023. We are here in the County Commissioners Conference Room for a work session regarding our 2024 and 2029 preliminary strategic plan goals, and kind of report out from our community leaders meeting last week. And so I am Larimer County Commissioner Jody Shapik-Downey, Chair of the Board of County Commissioners. I welcome you all to our meeting today. This is really exciting as we embark on a new strategic plan. So joining me today are my colleagues, Commissioner John Kafalis and County Commissioner Kristen Stevens. Also joining us is our County Manager, Lorenda Volker, and our Assistant County Manager, Lori Kadrich, and kicking this off and helping us lead this discussion is our Performance Budget and Strategies Director, Josh Fudge. And Josh has a new title, that's why I'm trying to make sure I have it correct. So I will now turn this over to Josh, who will lead us through some of the things that have already started to formulate and develop for our new strategic plan. Thank you, Josh, and thank you everyone for being here today.
Thank you. So to just walk through the agenda today, we do only have an hour for this work session, so it'll be fairly high level. But as you mentioned, Commissioner, we have made some progress on our next version of the strategic plan, and we wanted to give you an update on that progress and also see if you have any direction for us, make sure we're going the right way with this. So I think we may end up calling this the 2024 to 2028 strategic plan because in general it's 5 years and would kick off in 2024. So previous documents that I've prepared on this have it going through 29, but I think technically it'll only go through 28. But we can determine that as we go forward as well. So on the agenda today is an update or an overview of the themes that emerged at the Community Summit that was held last week, a proposed structure for the plan, again at a very high level, and then some of the next steps that we are looking at. So the Community Summit was held last week, exactly a week ago today, on Wednesday the 19th. And just as part of this, a really high overview of it, all of the participants were sent a survey by the consultants who facilitated the event, and they did a great job facilitating it. And they asked the participants to come up with sort of priority areas or topics or issues that they felt should be included in this next version of our county strategic plan. And then they took basically the top 12 or 13 of those. They also then did a follow-up to make sure they didn't miss any from that online survey. And they developed 13 main topic areas. And so I don't have the thorough notes that the consultant took from the meeting yet that kind of lays out all the background. Basically what the participants did, there were 13 tables, and so they were given big sheets of paper. Each one of them had these topic areas on them, and they went through a number of steps to talk about what is the future state that we would like to see with this topic area. What are some of the roadblocks we might face in achieving that that future state. What's kind of cool is they passed the paper around to different tables so that different groups could look at different issues. And so if one group maybe weren't experts in transportation, they still had a chance to weigh in on that. And so in that way, I think what we'll end up getting as far as the detailed notes on this will be pretty good. There's a big diverse feedback on that. So the 13 topic areas in no particular order that were identified, some of these will be familiar and some of them are things we're already working on. Sorry, not sure why it's not showing up there. Okay, 1 second.
We'll pause just a moment, not stop the recording, but just to let the audience know that we see the slides are not advancing, and we're looking down at our slides and taking notes, and we want to make sure you can all follow along with us. So I'm sure Josh will see if he can.
Here, let me try one thing. Basically going to relaunch it here. That's what it usually should. Well, I will get out of the slideshow view. This will look a little different, but at least it should be on the screen. Maybe. There we go.
Thank you, Josh.
Sure, sorry about that.
No, don't be sorry. Technology is sometimes not our friend.
So the 13 topics in no particular order are services and outreach to hidden populations. So those folks who generally don't maybe participate in our community meetings, who don't maybe don't sign up for services for which they are eligible. Really those groups that for whatever reason the county just has not been able to reach. Affordable housing, of course, is an ongoing topic. It's a goal or a objective in our current strategic plan. Transportation at a very high level includes all modes of transportation, including transit, vehicles, things of that nature. Services for people experiencing homelessness. Mental health, which is, of course, an ongoing issue that the county is currently dealing with. Infrastructure, which had, from some of the notes that I did see, had some of the same sort of topic areas as transportation, as you might suspect, but also just facilities and natural resources and things of that nature. Water, which of course is a significant topic here in the county for the community. Childcare, which is also an issue that is in the current version of our strategic plan and is something that the county has been working on. Disaster planning and recovery, and also along with that was wildfires separately. Those are two areas also in which the county has been involved pretty significantly and trying to help out with. Protecting natural resources and open spaces, the needs and wants of various populations. And so again, seeking to help and get input from maybe those groups of members of our community that we haven't always done a great job of reaching out to or hearing from. And then finally, identifying funding sources for to support community-based organizations. And so those were the main topics that came from the Community Leaders Summit. Some of these are pretty similar in nature. Some of them, as I mentioned, are things that we are already doing. And so we've met once as a core team in between the Community Leaders Summit and today. And one thing that we would propose is, as we start to narrow this down to goals and objectives, is if we end up not including something that's on this list because maybe we're already doing it, it's sort of already been operationalized, and maybe the folks who showed up and said things of that nature just didn't know, is we would make sure to reach out to them and say, you know, the county is actually pretty active in this. We're sorry, you know, maybe we haven't communicated that very well, but here are the things we're doing towards that. And, you know, maybe that's not why you won't see it in the strategic plan. Now, that's just if it isn't. It very well could, but we wanted to make sure that we pointed that out. And, you know, in areas where they are very similar, maybe we combine them and, you know, let people know that we will be doing that and the reasons for that. So on a couple of slides upcoming, we have sort of the next steps and reaching out to the folks who participated in this to make sure, you know, that we get this list correct and things of that nature. So that is an overview of what we heard. Are there any questions on that?
Commissioner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Josh. Appreciate the rather quick turnaround with some of these overarching themes, and that the core group met also at least once so far. I have two questions. The first one is, in your conversations, perhaps within the core group, was there discussion about consolidating some of these themes, because there are some, I mean, your point is well taken about if it's become operationalized, that's something to keep in mind. But there's certainly things that could take this list of 13 down to something more manageable. So that, it sounds like you have discussed that and maybe have ideas on that.
Yeah, definitely. We don't have any, specific objectives around any of these identified yet, but we have talked that, some of these are pretty similar in nature, and so we would seek to combine them based on what we hear going forward.
So like housing and homelessness, perhaps. Okay.
Correct.
May I ask my second question?
Yes, please, Commissioner.
Thank you. What was it? So can you help me to further understand the process? And I think we'll get into that. There's a timeline thing. I understood in looking at this rather quickly last night that the people that were invited to the summit who may not have been able, it sounds like, let me take a pause. The people who were invited to the summit who may not have been able to attend, we are going to follow up with them.
Correct.
But I thought you also said a moment ago that we'll also follow up with the people who did attend to make sure we got their ideas correctly. Is that so far so good?
Correct, yep.
Okay. And then my question then is, or the overarching question is, we're intending to send out, I'm not sure when, a quote, comprehensive community survey. And I'm wondering, the process for developing those questions, probably some of that will come from here. But I'd like more information about that and how we would incorporate what could be overwhelming information from that as part of this process.
Yep.
Thank you, sir.
So, sure, Michelle Bird, our Public Affairs Director, is working on creating the community survey now. And so we will be including some of these topics in that. We'll try, on the one hand, to ask about these things, but also perhaps try to gather information about things that aren't here, because, the community survey will be going to a broader audience.
And I believe, I understand that at some point when there's a draft, we'll be able to see that and offer our feedback.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for answering my questions.
Commissioner Stevens, did you have any questions?
Yeah, I'll just ask one for now. I think Commissioner Cavallis asked a couple of mine, but with regard to the community survey, I mean, and not saying that we have to structure things as we had in the past, but in the past we had sort of an internal services. And so is that where we feel like we would get the most information about maybe internal work that we might need to do or services that we provide to the community? Because, I mean, I think that some of these community summit themes get at that, but I think in other spaces there may be, people who wait too long in a line for one of our services or something like that. Do we hope to get some of that information from the community survey, or will we be talking to, departments to kind of also, parse that out?
I would say both of those. So the community survey will tell us how happy folks are with the services we provide as an organization. And that is where we got some of the ideas last time about changing the name of this building, about opening up services on the website, because we heard that from customers. We also heard it from county leaders and county staff. So we'll be pulling in employee survey data. We'll work with the community survey. We'll have the department heads get involved. And we'll have this leadership group, second round of follow-up to make sure that we're not missing something. We think if we can gather a lot of information up front, we can then set better goals long-term and better objectives under those goals that best meet what matches with what we can do as a county, what's important to you, and what's important to the community. A lot of the ideas that came out, not all, but a lot, we're working on, or it's kind of outside our area. And so you've, in the past, said we'd like to tackle something that we feel has always been outside of our area. So those will be the kind of discussions we'll have if those kind of issues come up more and more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So when we sent out the community survey, since we've already had some experience seeing some things that folks maybe aren't aware of what we have done, and maybe they've already asked this question, will we maybe list some things of the other strategic plan and identify that we've been successful in achieving all those goals, and that we have this water, because we found out people don't understand we've been doing a massive water assessment and plan, and maybe just to kind of state that up front so that they don't answer it, and then they find out, oh, wow, I feel kind of silly, I didn't know that was happening, right? And I'd much rather empower them with information. I know that's a lot of information, but maybe, hey, if you're interested to see what we've already been doing, maybe they want to drill down, maybe they don't want to drill down. But I heard talking to some of the folks at the summit when they brought up, hey, I want to talk to you about water. And I said, oh, yeah, that's great. I'm glad you're interested in that. But we have a water plan. We did this water stakeholder group, and we've hired a firm we're implementing this plan. And people had no idea. And these were the leaders. And I'm like, well, that's something we can certainly improve our outreach on that. But they had said to me, God, I wish I had known that. Then I would have looked at the plan and thought about what I thought maybe that needed to be a strategic goal in the plan. So that's where I'm going, is some of those leaders wish they had known some of those things, because then they would have said, oh, you're already doing that. Well, okay, let's find out what you're doing, and then how can we advance that? So that's why I bring that up. Not only trying to help to educate the public, but I think some of the leaders said that they wish they had no idea. And I said, that's not on you. That's probably for us trying to just share more with what we're doing. So I just bring that up because that was feedback I had received. So I don't know if that's helpful or not.
It's very helpful, and I think we try to balance reading and homework and survey fatigue.
Yeah.
We'd rather get some answers and then craft a message around what we are doing. We did actually send some things, quite a few things out ahead of the community summit that had a lot of the status of the current strategic plan. But these are busy folks, and we didn't expect them all to do all the homework. So maybe we could do some of the same links in the survey and let folks who really are interested in kind of digging into what the county's already doing, open it, but not have paragraphs ahead of the questions that might prevent people from scrolling down to the questions.
That's exactly what I was thinking, because I know I have survey fatigued, and so, but I know sometimes there's geeky people like me who like, oh, I want to learn more about this, and if I have the opportunity, I will take it. So, and it's just some feedback, and I think my biggest takeaway is them asking questions like that, is that they really cared and they wanted to really be engaged and provide really important input. And I took that to heart and I thanked them and expressed my gratitude, because that's what we need. That's what we hope, is that folks will come and want to engage and share all their information and share their expertise and share their perspective and their ideas. And for that, I want to thank you all, because I thought that was very successful at that Community Leaders Summits, and I'm very grateful for everyone in their participation. So anyway, sorry, thanks for letting me bring that up.
Sure. So the next item is a proposed structure for the new version of the strategic plan. How the previous two plans have worked is that individual commissioners have been the executive sponsors of the high-level goals. And back when the county first implemented its first strategic plan in 2013, that was partially out of necessity, because the county then didn't have service category directors who were sort of leaders in these groups of services that we provide that now really are sort of mapped evenly with the strategic plan. In general, we have the Human and Economic Health Director, and we have one goal this year that's around quality of life and is really related to those economic and human services programs type areas. The same with community planning, infrastructure, and resources. We have a goal around infrastructure and things of that nature. And so that continued on in the current version of the plan, but as we put our heads together, we've talked about, you as the Board of County Commissioners together own this whole plan. There's no individual goal really that belongs to either of you. Of course, you have your interests and priorities and things of that nature, but at the end of the day, the whole plan is really yours to adopt. And so what we would propose doing is, because we basically have 4 service category directors, support services, community planning, infrastructure and resources, human and economic health, and public safety, is that we start to perhaps tailor some of the goals around those areas and have them be the executive sponsors of those goals. And then within those high level, sort of goals is we have goal stewards who sort of keep this plan on track, moving along, making sure that the objective teams are getting their work done and tracking things of that nature. And in previous plans, we also didn't have my position sort of doing the administrative work of that. It's kind of fallen into the cracks in some cases between the county manager, the assistant county manager, and things of that nature. And so there will presumably be a little more administrative oversight and organizing that I can do as well. And so while we don't necessarily yet have specific ideas for 4 high-level goal areas like in the current plan, where there's the quality of life, there's the providing services, which is really sort of that internal goal. Based on the issues that we know about it and on the feedback from the summit last week, we think there's probably 4 high-level buckets that we could start to create goals within. So hopefully I've done a decent job of explaining that overall structure. And I don't know if you have any questions about that.
So let me just add before you go, we know that the service category directors, they have access to you all, and so they will ask you for advice and guidance and feel comfortable doing that. We've got experience doing that with them. And so it feels like there may be objectives within each goal that you all may be more affiliated with than others. We hope by doing this, we can weave both EDI and the climate plan work throughout the organization, because I don't want to have 3 plans that are very separate. We want a strategic plan that incorporates the county's vision and direction. And so we may need to meet with you more frequently if the full board is going to be providing guidance. Maybe at first it's monthly as we go forward. Maybe quarterly is a fine cadence. Maybe we have special meetings in between to get guidance from the full board. But it felt like this was a good way to have the service categories provide leadership for the areas that they're familiar with, and still have goal stewards who are those up-and-coming leaders who are maybe not in a formal leadership position, but are willing and interested to be developed and mentored. So we didn't want to leave that out in the plan. So that's this is a proposal to you all. We imagine you'll be advisors indirectly or directly on various objectives because of your areas of interest. But we thought maybe let the whole board provide guidance in the same way that you're all elected at large and you live in a district, but the county as a whole is your concern. It feels kind of like that model we could do here. Very interested in your thoughts.
So I'm curious, and I look at this structure, I don't see my colleagues' hands up, so I'm going to ask a question. You said 4 service area directors, but where would you and Lori fit on this chart?
So just like now, everywhere. If you think about the previous plan and the previous manager, she really wasn't on a team. She really did help all the executive sponsors kind of manage their goals, provide guidance, be the bridge between you all, between other departments, maybe outside the organization. And so we see ourselves being sort of shepherds around this plan. We talked about Josh having not only guidance and ownership of the plan administration, but maybe attach a communications person to help make sure we're telling the message more frequently and in a more, polished way than we really haven't done a great job of that, except to say we're meeting publicly and talking to you all about it, which is great. That'll still continue, and we can add to that.
Okay, just curious, because I figured you're in there somewhere, but I just didn't know if you needed to be a box. So, okay, thank you. Colleagues, Commissioner Stevens.
Yeah, I like this plan structure. I think that this is probably a good way to go forward. I think that it avoids kind of segmenting some of the stuff between commissioners, and then some people know this information, some people know that. I mean, it sounds like it would result in more work sessions for us to be able to, touch base. On the other hand, it seems like a really smart way to divvy it up between the service category directors. I feel like we'll all get the same information at the same time, which is good. And like you said, I mean, I think we all have areas where we have either subject matter expertise, or we have, boards or things that we work on that will likely fall under one of these categories. But at the same time, I think getting all the information together, and I just think having it less segmented is a really good idea. It feels stronger to have the board be the overseer of all the areas, all the goals, and not just portions of the goals. So I like it.
Commissioner Kafalis?
Thank you. I essentially agree with the comments shared by Commissioner Stevens. I think this is a good proposed structure. In addition to what I heard, I think it also might help with creating synergies between different goals and objectives, and maybe greater integration. And I think Kristen or Commissioner Stevens used the word segmented. I think whatever we can do to move away from operating in silos is a desirable thing. So overall, I think this is great. A question I have, and maybe Lorenda can expand on this. I was curious about the goal stewards. I think you alluded to up-and-coming folks, but I'm wondering if you fleshed that out more, and who that, what categories of up-and-coming folks might be considered, and then also what the process would be if it's going to be different. Sorry about that. If it's going to be different than in the past in terms of selecting the objective team members.
So we haven't gotten as far as identifying who those goal stewards might be until we see what the goals flesh out to be, once we get all this community input. So we have purposely not put any details onto this chart except, goal and goal steward and objective, because we don't want to give the impression to anyone that we think we have all the answers at the very beginning of gathering the information.
But we would create opportunities for, it doesn't necessarily have to be a, quote, department head. It could be someone designated by the department head in a way, like you were suggesting, Lorenda, to help people that may not be department heads, but, a way to give them a challenge or something like that.
That's right. And I think that
Okay.
could happen both at the goal steward level and at the objective team leader level. We have, I think, a good history of that. So I'd like to continue it. I mean, we ask folks to raise their hands if they're interested, but we also ask leaders to nominate folks within their organization. So it's kind of a two-way process.
Okay. I guess I guess my question was answered about where our manager and assistant manager would be, so that helps with my concern. So who would be, the question I have is it the executive sponsors or the goal stewards that would maybe reach out to us with questions or guidance? Just curious about how, or is that we still kind of figuring that out?
We're still figuring it out, but I do think that the executive sponsors, those service category leaders, are very comfortable with you all and could sit down and just ask a candid question that the group is working on this, they'd like some guidance, you work in this area, what do you think? What might your colleagues want to know? How might that work?
Okay.
That's how I imagine it working, but I don't think we're going to be so structured around it that we would prevent a goal steward from having a similar conversation as we get rolling with this plan.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you for that feedback. So related to this, and Commissioner Kafalis, you kind of provided a good segue to this. We do hope to create objectives that are related to similar themes across these high-level goals. And so, as you mentioned, sort of integrating them. An example we used here is that, one of the themes was people experiencing homelessness. Perhaps we have goals or maybe objectives is a better term here under a quality of life or a similar, human services type goal for programs and things of that nature. But then perhaps on an infrastructure related goal, there's something else that could help with this theme as well, such as transportation to services. Those were some of the details that we saw. And so the current and previous plans have kind of been pretty specific or sometimes siloed in their objectives. But we're hoping to maybe take a look at some of these themes and say, are there things across these goals that would help? And so that's just one piece of that as well. So hopefully that is acceptable. So finally, as far as the next steps, first of all, although it probably wouldn't happen really until January, is we do need to close out the current strategic plan, which has an end date of 2023. We have created documents, as Lorenda mentioned, for the Community Leaders Summit, kind of showing the outcome of even the previous plan, but also the current plan that ends this year. And we would update that, as the end of the year goes on and really focus on those things that have become operational. As far as a document or report goes, it may also show, we would add in that, we heard about this issue as we created the 2024 through 2028 plan. However, it was already addressed in the current plan or has been operationalized. Here's what we've done and here's what we're continuing to do, so that you don't think, we're just ignored what you said as you gave us feedback and things of that nature. So in addition to that, we hope to have some sort of event where we would, thank all the folks who participated in creating or meeting the objectives of the current plan, who participated. It would likely be in January, closing out the year. Right now, we're kind of thinking of perhaps an afternoon lunch or something of that nature, really to recognize that these are other duties as assigned. These folks went above and beyond their normal work to participate in these things and move the county forward. And so we are aware that the plan is coming to an end, and so we will close it out and make everyone aware of what we did.
We have a couple more work sessions with you all to give you interim updates as these things become operational. So a great example is the broadband objective. We consider that fully operational. We have staff, we have a plan, it has a budget. We want to celebrate that, and that will likely not carry forward to the next plan because it is just part of what the county does, much like the Office of Emergency Management did not continue in the plan because it was formed as a result of the first plan. So we'll celebrate those kind of things and maybe have people tell some stories and give some highlights. I also wanted to mention that we've added Nectar Points as a thank you to this program. So we've added them through the balance of this current strategic plan, and those rewards will be part of the next strategic plan to be given out by the goal stewards. So we had done it a little haphazardly. The goal stewards had to make the request before it was done, but there wasn't really a clear sense of how to do it and how to make it happen. Now that we have the Nectar system, that is the way that it seems to be very much appreciated. So we'll continue that.
That sounds great, and I really like the idea of showing gratitude to all those employees. We actually have, I think, majority of employees who do above duties as assigned. Certainly Josh is one of those employees who does above duties as assigned in the immediate needs grants. I will go back to that as we have been looking at those at our MN Matters meeting. So thank you, Josh. And I think that sounds like a really great plan. And as a reminder, it's almost the end of the month. We've got to give out our Nectar Points. So, yeah.
Definitely. So as far as next steps in creating the next plan, we will survey about 100 invitees to the Community Summit who did not attend to see if they come up with perhaps any other priority themes, if you will. We will then do outreach to all of the Community Summit invitees to ensure that, we basically got it right with these 13. There will be a final report on the Community Summit that our consultants will provide us with, and so we'll take that into account as well, and we'll forward it on to you. And then sort of next after that is to reach out to our department heads with these themes that end up sort of rising to the top and getting their ideas as to what types of things the county might be able to do in those areas. They are kind of the subject matter experts. And so we'll start to work with them to sort of refine those themes into goals and objectives. that we can actually accomplish. And so that will begin probably in August and take a couple of months. The community survey will also be out. I talked about that a little bit, and so we'll get the results of that, and that could also inform some goals and objectives as well. The county employee survey will be done in November, and so we'll see how we can integrate some of this in with that and perhaps get other ideas as well, maybe especially around internal, topics. And then continuing on, let's see. So this is sort of a month by month look. In August, we'll start to set those high-level goals and to identify goal stewards. By September, we will be doing the outreach, as we mentioned, and start to develop those specific objectives to be finalized in October. And our goal is to adopt a final strategic plan in October. Hopefully, that might be a little ambitious, but we're going to try to get that done. And then in November and December, we will start to identify and create those objective teams and get started with any luck on or shortly after January 1st. So that is the last slide in the presentation.
Did you have a question, Commissioner? Go ahead.
Regarding the community survey, what is our strategy for ensuring as best as we can that all or the key sectors of our community will receive that? I think that kind of lines up with one of the identified themes. Thoughts on that, Josh?
I know that Michelle is aware of the need to do that. What her specific strategies are for that, I'm not entirely sure. But I will definitely work with her to make sure that, we do make an effort to reach out to those populations.
And if I may, maybe to put a bit of an exclamation point, I think we all are in agreement that that's important, and we need to be as creative and intentional as possible. And one thought I have that might be helpful is, the people that are doing the organizing work at the Hickory Village, and they do that language justice. The last two meetings of the NFCBA, there's been a contingent of folks who live out at Hickory Village, and they have the headsets on. But it's interesting that they've been there. It's been great that they've been there. And I'm wondering if it's because it's a really immediate issue. They're concerned about the 24/7 homelessness shelter. But there might be some ideas there, La Familia, that whole crowd.
Okay. We do have a follow-up work session on this topic shortly on August 9th, I believe it is. And so I can follow up with her and get some more information on that topic for that work session too.
Commissioner Stevens.
Yeah, just, this sounds like a great plan going forward, with regard to next steps. I think that the detailed notes will be really helpful to get from the consultants, because I think about, some of these issues, they're pretty broad. And there are a lot of spaces where some of this work is operational. And so, are there, how do we identify parts that aren't, or what people were trying to get at? Is it just a matter of education, as Commissioner Shattuck McNally was saying, or is there more work to do in some of these spaces? So I think that I'm really interested in seeing, how the further, both the detailed notes and the further conversations that we're having with community members will kind of help us pin something down that feels like something we need to work on. And, some of the work is clearly in the category of never quite done. But if we have a plan for it, it's probably not something we want to tack on to this list. So I'll be really curious to see, what kind of makes it through the strainer as we go through the process. But I think that this sounds like a great plan. I'm looking forward to really seeing what the community wants us to work on, and honestly what department heads as well, because they're out there every day engaging with the public, and what kind of needs are they seeing in these spaces that have been identified. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to put my cent and a half in. So my first thing is, I agree, as we look at with the community survey, trying to make sure we reach out, I am going to beat my similar drum that we got to get to all corners of the county. We have very strong, engaged communities in Estes Park, from the Hispanic community, Latinx community, that are very engaged, and we just won an award, as you know, with a comprehensive plan with that outreach, and I think that we should keep them engaged, and I think that they would really appreciate being at the table and having a chance to have more input, and I know I've heard that from them, that they want us to continue to engage them because they feel like there's some things that we've had that comprehensive plan, but now what? And I know they want to stay up there, so I really want to strongly advocate for us to keep that group engaged, because they're involved with the schools and the workforce and housing, and I think that's a really important group. Also want to make sure that we're being intentional about reaching out to not unincorporated residents and agencies, as well as people that live in municipalities, because we still feel like sometimes the rural areas that we still have trouble with roads and broadband and access, it's still important to make sure we're getting those voices, and those maybe nonprofits or organizations that are working in those areas. We have a lot of phenomenal partners that are working in the cities and things like that. And I want to make sure that we're, as I look at this goal, next week, we have very strong partnerships that we are part of, literally in the trenches and getting our hands dirty with disaster planning, recovery, and wildfires, with the watersheds, the fire sheds, the big Thompson Fort Watershed Health Partnership, which is the new group. And I want to make sure that they're been, because I know I saw pieces of them at the last week's summit, but I feel like they have they have data, they have on the ground things that are happening, and I didn't see as many electeds at last week, and I know I don't know if that was intentional, but I'm wondering if we also reach out to key leaders who are, maybe engaged and have a pulse on their community too. I don't know if they're going to be getting these surveys too, or what that looks like, or what kind of feedback we're going to get from some of our regional partners. And so I'm curious about that. So that's my first question.
So many of those folks were invited to the Leadership Summit and were not able to attend. So we'll be able to get data back from them in two ways. One, with the follow-up survey, once we have the facilitator notes, and then anyone can take the survey. Michelle makes a real effort. We do have a QR code. We'll ask you to take it out to all your community meetings, to spread it through your networks. We'll use social media. We'll use community groups that we work with to get that word out. And the last time we did this, we had a really great return on that survey, which was very rewarding to see. So I think that's why she might be reluctant to start till she's ready to really do the push, because we want to make sure that we do communicate across the county, inside city limits, outside city limits. The county touches everyone. And so we want to make sure we reach the entire population of the county to the extent we can, and to the extent people are willing to click that QR code and go in and take the survey.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, just having conversations with businesses that live, and are in unincorporated areas that are more, rural, or nonprofits, like, I'm thinking like Horse and Horses and some of those groups. I'm just, those people have been contacting me lately. That's why they're fresh in my mind, because they've had concerns. So my next question is, yeah, go ahead.
Would it help if you all had an email that you could send out to your network? Maybe if Michelle did a canned email that you could distribute in that way, not just carry the paper cards?
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great idea. So we can go with are we on the last slide? Number 8? Yeah. So I think this is great that we're talking about next steps for the next plan, but I kind of want to know, I don't know, for me, just, maybe this is maybe a busy slide, but as next steps, as you talked about kind of the closeout of the other plan, should we have the build up for one plan and the closeout of the other plan? Because they're basically happening simultaneously, right? And so I didn't know if that would help kind of show we're kind of we're really doing two things at once. I don't know what you thought about that. For me, I thought that might be helpful to know if we're going to have something in October, or we're going to, celebrate, or we're going to, because I think in this other plan, we talked about the close out the curb plan and wrap up and reach out. I don't know, I just thought maybe that might be nice to have that on the same, at least a couple of slides, like, why we're building up to this next plan, we're kind of slowly closing. I mean, I kind of see this intersection, and so I'm just curious what your thought about that, just kind of, for me, I mean, I can maybe just have a separate, I don't know, separate slide, but I just kind of knowing we're kind of that cross-section and how we're, because the plan is still, we're still, like you said, reporting out on it, it's still happening. It's not all of a sudden just kind of wisping away. We're kind of, there is a intentional and definite closeout of that, and I just thought maybe it was nice to show that together. I don't know what your thoughts on that are.
We can certainly, as we have one or two more work sessions on the current plan, we can start to talk about, as the new plan is developed, if we see things starting to continue on into that, or even use that language of, we heard this is still an issue as we put the new plan together. We're closing it out on the current one, and so we'll make sure people know, the work that we're doing as we transition. So we can try to do that.
Well, but I guess maybe I'm not being clear, and I apologize for that. For us, you've set up this next steps. For August, we're going to have these two goals, but maybe in September, adding just another bullet, having a report out on the 23 plan. And then,
That's a good point. And maybe, I think what Josh was trying to say is we have meetings for both.
Okay.
So we have meetings that will be planning for the new plan. And we
Okay.
still have meetings on the books that will be closing out the current plan.
Okay.
And we'll be giving you those, so it'll feel like you're talking about the strategic plan a whole lot.
Yeah, okay.
As we approach the end of the year, because we're talking about two different versions of the plan and our status on
Okay.
each one.
So really, they're going to be separate meetings and separate slides. Okay.
Because we have separate goal stewards and
Yeah,
separate teams.
okay, that makes sense. I just was trying to picture in my head kind of what's happening, that we're still working on the current plan, and I want to say old plan, the current plan, and then starting this, building up this new one. So that makes sense. I appreciate that, Josh. Thanks for letting me, sometimes I have to talk through what I'm trying to say, but I'm visualizing that these are simultaneously happening and just trying to keep them kind of straight. And I apologize for everyone. I think we're getting Amber Alerts about a child abduction, so just apologize for the alerts, because I think we're all getting them. So anyway, any other questions, colleagues? It sounds like you guys have done a lot of work already in just the last week since we had our community summit. Commissioner Koufalis.
Well, just one last comment. Certainly thank you for all your work and revisiting the structure. I think that's a wise path forward. I think Lorinda may have gotten into this, but I think one way we can maybe do even a better job of reaching out to folks that normally we don't. We work with a lot of different groups, like even including groups like Housing Catalyst, for example. So somehow we could appropriately get this information to their staff, and then they could disseminate it to their, the people who live in their homes. And the same thing would apply to any of the groups, whether it's the Chamber of Commerce, that they could, send it to the key people, and they could send it out to their membership if they choose to.
Okay. Well, I just want to thank, I know a lot of folks, Josh and Lori and Lorinda, I know you guys have really been trying to set up kind of this structure to go forward, to take all this information that we're gathering and be able to build it into the structure. So I want to thank you for all your work in this presentation today. And again, I just commend you for a phenomenal session last week. And I know Michelle Bird and her team did a lot of work to set that up, but I think I really feel like we had a really strong, good first step and foundation going forward. And I'm really excited about the engagement we've had so far. So without any other questions, unless you have something else you'd like to add, Lorinda?
I just want to say thank you for your feedback. So this is your strategic plan, not ours. And we know that it's easier to edit something you see than it is to, start with a blank sheet of paper. So we're going to keep doing this with you, but don't think that we have our minds made up or this is a proposal that we're married to. We're not. This is your plan. We want it to be your plan, and we want it to reflect the community's values.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And so I don't think we have any other comments or questions. So at 2:20, we are adjourned. Thank you all for joining us.